Darn, I'm so sorry, we were
Go ahead.
unmuted, or we were muted. We have a quorum outside of San Mateo County and Belmont present. Thank you.
And I don't see any public comment in the room or online. So let's move forward. Could I get a motion to set the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, Marty.
San Mateo County. Atherton,
Yes.
Belmont. Brisbane,
Yes.
Burlingame,
Yes.
East Palo Alto,
Yes.
Millbrae,
Aye.
San Bruno, Portola Valley,
Yes.
and motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, and the next item on the agenda is the chair report, and I've got a couple of things to report. I think Anders and I are the only members of the board currently signed up to go down to San Diego. And if anyone else is interested, I encourage you to do so. It's going to be an interesting, the highlight for me is going to be the board members meeting. There's going to be a meeting of board members from all the CCAs that are present, and I think those connections are really important. So if anybody can make it, I encourage you to go.
What day is that? Because I understand.
That is,
The 17th through the 19th.
Okay, so
Wednesday.
what Wednesday?
Yes.
and Thursday and Friday are the real days. Wednesday's just kind of a evening get together.
Okay.
So I'm not going till Thursday, but I'll be there Thursday and Friday. Okay, Jennifer.
I didn't mean to interrupt, Rick. Sorry about that. I just wanted to ask the members of the committee to please announce their names prior to making comments. In the recorded versions of these meetings, we've been having some requests from the public on that. So just to record your name before your comment. Thank you.
Okay. And Jennifer, while you're there, I have a question for you. Do we need to do a roll call for every vote, or can we?
We do not, as all of the members are present. We can go back, revert to our old ways with not having to do a roll call since no members are remote.
Okay, great, thanks. So the other thing that I wanted to report is on Friday, I went to a meeting because Jan couldn't go, that was called by Nick, the CEO at East Bay Community Energy. And this is a meeting in Sausalito with a contractor, a large private contractor group called Bellows. And the attendees, I was the only board member there. The CEO of Silicon Valley Clean Energy was there. Nick was there. The CEO of San Jose Clean Energy was there. And I'm not sure if she was a CEO or a person responsible for energy from San Francisco was there. So there were 4 CCAs represented, and the couple that own Bellows, Bellows. This is a large private contractor, very focused on heat pumps and on electrification issues, but not just electrification, just in general plumbing and electrical. They have 100 trucks in the field in the Bay Area every day. They service every county in the Bay Area except San Francisco. They have about 125 active employees. And there were 2 things that came out of it that I thought were really important. And I've had a little bit of discussion with Rafael about this, and I think we need to meet with Bellows at some point to understand this better. But one of the things that they said is the effort to fully electrify a house is no idle matter. It's both a major cost and a major problem in that both the contractors and the solutions that are being deployed are very poor. They said that the difference of putting in an electrical water heater versus a gas water heater is a 4x difference in level of complaints. And there's a whole lot of information they provided, and they weren't against electrification. They are at the leading edge of doing electrification. But they had quite a bit to say that was really interesting from the field. And they were very concerned about heat pumps going into multifamily units because the cooling unit of the heat pump has to be outside. And they're very noisy, they said, and they've gotten just lots of complaints about that. In fact, they've had to go in and retrofit full electric changeovers to make them dual energy changeovers, because there's a technology that they use where if you include a heat pump with an existing gas furnace, the technology at the thermostat can control when the unit uses gas and when it uses electricity. And they said about 80 to 85% of the time it'll use electricity. But the difference in the quality of how quickly the unit heats from a heat pump versus a gas furnace is quite significant. And so when the temperature gets below 45 to 40 degrees, when it gets cold, they said people really want the gas because it heats up much more quickly. And the heat pump will have to go all day long to keep a house warm. I'm sure it depends on what size the house is, but to keep it warm when it's very cold, as it was during this winter.
This is Donna.
Wait, one more comment, and then please chime in. The other thing that they said is that the electric hot water heaters are much less efficient than the gas hot water heaters in terms of how quickly the water gets heated. So to be able to arrange for more than one shower at a time, you have to have a larger hot water heater. And their experience is you have to go from I forget whether it's 30 or 40 gallon tank to an 80 gallon tank in order to have an equal amount of hot water at if you're running more than one shower after another.
Yeah, 50 is standard for larger homes, and you have to go up to the significantly larger 80.
And they said the big problem with that is that for an 80 gallon hot water heater, the space where the existing 50 gallon hot water heater is in won't hold an 80 gallons. So you have to do some construction work in order to bring that in. And then the final thing is they were asked, how often do you have to upgrade the electrical panel? And their response was very often. It was different than what I had heard before. So they had quite a bit to say about it. And their solution isn't to not do electric. Their solution is to do a dual source solution, which in fact kind of addresses some of the issues we've talked about in terms of the lack of backup if you go to electricity and if the grid goes down. So it was a very interesting conversation. It went about a little over 2 hours. So I mean, they had a lot to say and they were asked a lot of questions by people at the table. Again, I think it's really important that we meet with them and get their perspective. Donna.
About the costs.
So what-
Was there more about the costs that they told you about?
Yeah, the cost, the cost to add, I said to them, well, okay, if you're gonna add the electricity onto a furnace, what's the cost versus going with a full heat pump? And it was really dramatic. And they said, you can put the electricity unit above the gas furnace. It fits in almost every enclosure that the gas furnace is in, costs about $3,500. And to do a complete replacement where it's all electric, it's at least $20,000.
Wow.
So really a big difference.
Wow.
So, and that obviously has implications for us in terms of the rebate, but I think we should just treat this as an introduction. And we should meet with them and really go into the detail and understand everything they have to say.
Are they,
Donna?
thank you, Stella. So just a few questions. First of all, are they unionized
They're not unionized.
or not?
Yeah, they're not unionized, but I believe that they're prevailing wage and they have an apprenticeship program. And they were asked quite a number of questions about their apprenticeship program because I raised how important it is to have people go through an apprenticeship
Right,
program.
right,
The only
right.
apprenticeship program that I was familiar with was through the IBW.
Yeah,
And they said, actually, we have an apprenticeship program and we would expand it if we could. It's supported by the state of California.
yeah,
So-
there are non-union apprenticeship programs, especially up in the Central Valley. There's a lot of them. So, okay, just curious about that. And then, so if the cost to install is going up so much, did they say anything about the electric bill, your new?
They didn't,
Okay,
I didn't hear that.
so if you've got to run this pump all day long
Yeah,
versus gas,
definitely gonna
it's
be
obviously
more
gonna be a
electricity.
lot of money, right? for
Yeah.
Electricity, so it'd be interesting to understand from some of their customers what the new, what the increased cost was on their monthly bill.
Yeah, what I'm most focused on was the emissions issue, and they said that if you had a dual source space heating, you would save about 80% of the emissions,
Okay.
maybe a little more, but
Okay.
about 80%.
So will that, I mean, will a dual source system comply with the upcoming new BACMed rules?
I don't think so.
I don't either.
But with the BACMed rules are subject to this 2025 review of whether, I mean, the timetable for BACMed is completely conditional on looking at this in 2025
Right,
and seeing if the issues we raised in our letter to them, they have to see if they're contractors, if there's product that'll
yeah, I mean, my concern is that, there's a very big disconnect between BACMed and the realities of getting this implemented, which you just spent a couple hours learning about. And that even in 2025, which, really means 24, because you've gotta study it for a year and figure it out, it's even within a year.
Yeah.
They're not gonna really have data on this, and my concern is they're gonna continue just to push it through without really having the data, and there might be just, a lot of the
maybe, I mean,
issues
they
with-
say they're gonna study it, so. Yeah. There was a lot of comments around the table from the CCA members who, have a number, their board members are quite a number of the members of the BACMed board.
Mhm.
So they felt like this is something that could be addressed, and I said, we need to do a comparative case study. I
Yeah.
mean, this has to be done.
And-
Carlos,
I was just, my last question just was on the electrification of water heating, so there's another interesting piece of that, which is the recirculating pumps, so you can get a lot more efficiency in water usage, because when you turn your water on, it comes out warm, but you do have to run your pump constantly, even when you're not there.
yeah,
So that you save gallons and gallons and gallons of water. I
True.
mean, there's it's a trade-off, right? And then you have to run it constantly.
yeah, I can tell you, I'm very familiar with that because I have circulation pumps
So
on
I
my two water heaters and I turned them both off. Actually, I put them on timers.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
The solar pump can be set up in a way that it turns on only a certain time of the day when you expect to use those times.
Yeah.
yeah, like in the morning and the evenings or whatever.
There's also, this is Jeff, there's also a push button activated pump and a motion sensor activated pump, so that if you walk into your bathroom, it'll start the water, it'll run the pump for a minute or two to get the hot water and return. And so
And then
you
you can,
and then you're good with the hot water and you're probably shut off.
and my question though is really, do those work better? I mean, like, will you get more efficiency in both water production and energy production if you put something like that on? Because I'm seeing that there's talk to just completely ban recirculating pumps in some building codes.
That may be, I don't know, I didn't know if any The 24/7 recirculation pumps a nightmare. It's a really bad policy. The demand controlled ones are much better, and the modeling shows they save a lot of energy and rubber. They do work if you implement them properly. People don't like waiting the extra minute for the pump to catch up. So that is a problem.
Okay, I mean, I was just kind of curious if there was,
I think there's a number of areas we need to
that would be. a good one to
explore
look
more
at, too.
fully.
Mhm.
Andrew, Carlos, go ahead.
Yeah, so to me, this is an early adopter issue, and I'll tell you why. So the Europeans and the Japanese, and they've been using it for a long time. They have a completely different construction and housing market, right? Much more compact. They use ductless systems, right? One of the reasons it's so much cheaper to piggyback with the electric component is you're using your existing ductless system.
Right.
Once you pull it out and you
Yeah.
go to an AC heat pump system, you're looking at mini splits. The mini splits come with the condensers plus the air handlers, right, which are ducts, right? Put that all together, yes, it's a 25,000, I actually helped a nonprofit did something out their own, they helped it review, or review the bid. So I think, I don't, we cannot turn our back on this electrification piece. Maybe the transition piece is that we wind up having this dual fuel stuff,
Right.
but I think eventually we're gonna understand, and by the way, on the 12th, we opened 189 unit, all electric building, everything. There is no gas to that building. It's an affordable housing development. Let's see how that works, right? I mean, the engineers tried, the mechanical engineers tried to oversize the system, understanding these problems. But I'm worried, a lot of the folks who know about this technology say it's gonna work, blah, blah, blah. I mean, Mary Ann Durwood, she went to Europe, she said, my heat pump, it cost her $6,000, it's gone out 3 times. Right, her water heater.
Has gone up 3 times?
Gone out 3 times.
Has gone out.
Right, yeah. They have to have the folks, come in, and they cover parts, they don't cover labor.
And that's consistent with what they said in terms of complaints at a 400% level.
Yeah, so I think that we, it's this early adopter issue that we're gonna have to, try to get folks into it. As we get a larger installed base, we can figure out some of these problems, but I think it's inevitable that because we haven't tried this technology in a country that has, the average size of a home in this country is now 2,400 square feet. The average size of a home in Europe is like 970. Huge difference. If we lived on their footprint, we would have a greenhouse gas issue. Sorry. Anyway, so just like it's an early adopter issue, we got to figure out how we, I think, do the public relations piece, right? And so that we don't turn people away completely off from trying to, maybe it's the piggybacking piece.
Yeah.
My worry is,
Yeah, we
bring
just-
this out.
We just need to look at it.
Yeah.
And all the data we can get is helpful.
Yeah.
Anderson, Jeff.
Yeah, so I perfectly agree with what Carlos just said. I also grew up in a country where we don't use forced airs. That's where that's how I grew up, right? Using either a little VTEC system or a mini split system, and those things have been existing for 50 plus, if not longer, years. So it just wasn't so widely deployed in this country. And so therefore, it's not as cost competitive. Right, there's less labor being trained to install the system, and there's less of them available. And it's an early adoption issue where the more of that installation that happens, the cheaper it's going to get, and more competitive it's going to get. In all countries will catch on to this. So that's where I think that needs to happen. Right, there's a little bit of growing pain there. We cannot back away from the sector, obviously. But then at the same time, you talked a little bit about the water heating. And I think the multi-family piece really needs to be studied a little bit more. They need to be more of a, I think that there need to be discussions about, where we should push the single family piece of it versus the multi-family piece of it. I think we might get a lot more efficiency in making headways in this program if we can really focus a little more on multi-family. especially when we talk about circulation. So. Anyway, so I just, I'm gonna think through this a little bit more, but I think the multi-family piece is important. That we need to focus on.
Jeff,
Yeah, this is Jeff House. I have modeled and then verified in the field probably 2 or 3 dozen all electric homes in the area, most of them in Palo Alto because they have a requirement. Yeah, the heat pump water heaters, I mean, I've seen dozens of them. I don't hear about a lot of these, yeah, sometimes they fail, but I don't hear that many more complaints. I mean, I will say that 7 or 8 years ago, longer ago, 10 years ago, when gas tankless water heaters started being introduced, everyone said the same thing, they're not reliable, stick with this water heater. The installers didn't like them. You know, 2 or 3 years ago, I was talking to, plumbing contractors about heat pump water heaters, and they were very resistant. Now they're basically, some of them are installing nothing else, because that's just what the market's doing. And, early technology is tricky. I mean, with mini splits 10 years ago, nobody would do them, because contractors were just, wasn't scared to death. So, but I'm saying the market, the overall market was like, don't do those. Now they're pretty much, it's hard to imagine that. So the market evolves and the products get better. And, in Palo Alto, gas prices fluctuated so much this past winter that the trade-off between running a heat pump for longer, running a gas furnace or a gas water heater actually changed. I've seen clients who will save a lot of money by switching from gas to electric, even with the electric costs have stayed somewhat stable, the retail costs, the gas costs spiked.
especially in Palo Alto.
Yes. So, I mean, it's not to say that the technology is perfect or completely arrived yet. It's just, I'm curious. I mean, I'd be happy to meet with them and hear more of their stories. I've heard similar stories, but in recent times I have heard much better stories in terms of electric bulb.
I think we should send Rick to a mechanical contractor's convention. Go to Vegas.
Okay, any other question or comment? Colleen,
I would just, I would agree with Andrews. Our own house, we're getting ready to do a heat pump water heater, and every week the bill just keeps going higher. Because now they've said, oh no, at the last minute, can't put it in the house, you're gonna hate it, the noise. We have a house that's 900 square feet, small cottage. And so at the last minute, this is a contractor who's done lots of them in the county. He's done one right around the corner from us, roughly same size house. And he said, you can't put it in the house. I know you're gonna hate it. It's like, why didn't you tell us that a couple weeks ago? So now he wants to trench out to the garage, which is not attached. So we're going to dig up lots of concrete and trenches and have to put pipes in. And so it just keeps growing. And I think this is doing us more of a disservice when we push a lot of the small residential, because people hear the horror stories. And I'm trying to not tell anyone, so I'm telling all of you. But as we encounter these difficulties, I do think multifamily is obviously the easiest way to start. Public buildings, Brisbane, our public buildings, we're putting them in all of them. And then people get used to the idea and they go, oh, okay, wow, we have one working here, it's working well. Because that PR is huge. And right now, there is so much resistance, and it's building because people are talking and going, there's no way we'll have enough electricity, and it's gonna be so expensive, and then power is gonna go out, and you're not gonna have any hot water, and you're not gonna have a warm house. So we have to really think about that.
This is Rick DeGolia, we all know that there's gonna be challenges. This is a big transition. And I think we just have to get all the data that we can and assess it. And it may be that we need to support a transition. I mean, I'm not sure, but I think we just need to get the information, because we need people's support. And we all know it's going to be easier to address this issue in new construction than it is in retrofits. But we need all the data we can get, and to get that from the field, I think is a valuable thing. And that's not to say that they have all the answers. I didn't think that, but they had a lot of data that I think would be worthwhile to listen to. And we can challenge them and understand exactly where that's coming from, but it will help us. So, yes,
Calling
Colleen.
back again, I would just suggest we talk to more of the contractors just like you spoke to a big one, let's talk to some of the smaller ones.
Yeah.
And find out what they've encountered, what the problems are, get that feedback as well. Because if we turn them off, they're gonna start telling people, just replace it with gas.
That's right.
We've got to win them over.
Okay, thank you, everybody. The next item on the agenda is the CEO report.
Thank you. We could go to the first slide, please. So we don't have any new staff members to welcome this month, other than Andy's back. We all know Andy, and we're really
That's not
happy to
new.
have Andy back. Thank you for stepping in and helping us, Andy. So we have a few positions posted on the website. We're looking still for, we're hiring 3 power resources analysts or specialists. So we're still looking for people to take those roles. We have 6 or 7 summer internships that we're looking for, and it's going to close this Friday. So if you know any undergraduate or graduate students who are interested in working with us this summer, please encourage them to get their application in before the end of the week. And then we have also posted a new job, an account services specialist, to join Leslie's group. Shayna has moved from Leslie's group over to the Power Resources group, so we're filling Shayna's position. And then soon we will be posting a position for senior manager of local power development. That's to focus on the 20 megawatts of local resources that we are building. Any questions about that? Next slide, please. So as Rick noted, the Cal CCA conference is actually happening next week, right?
Yeah.
So on Friday is the elected officials luncheon, and after that here. So I am going to be one of the hosts for that luncheon, along with Karen Burns from San Diego Community Power and Barbara Boswell from Clean Energy Alliance. Fiona Ma will be there to give some comments. There will be some local legislators there to also talk. Senator Catherine Blakespear, Senator Steve Padilla, Assemblymember Tasha Borner-Harvath, and Assemblymember David Alvarez. And then there'll be some local elected officials talking. And Rick is actually one of the people, as well as Diana Mahmood from Clean Power Alliance. I think she's from South Pasadena. David Drucker, the chair of Clean Energy Alliance, and Joe Cava, the chair of San Diego Community Power. So encourage people to come. Clean Energy Alliance has about 10 people. They have, it looks like they have their whole board coming. And we, let's see, MCE has about 5 board members coming. Orange County has 5 board members coming. We so far have just 2, Rick and Anders, so encourage more of you to attend. Silicon Valley Clean Energy has 4 board members coming. Valley Clean Energy has 4 board members coming. So if you're able to come, just, even if you can just go down on Friday for the lunch, which is from 12 to 1:30, that would be great. If you can't, that's fine. I'm sure we'll be able to report back. But the advantage of going is to be able to talk to the other board members, other council members from other CCAs, and we really want to try to start energizing and engaging that group to push the what we're trying to do here at CCA.
Maybe, it's Dawn, maybe offer out to the, what about our backup people,
Alternate?
alternates? What about offering to, like, I would love to go, I just have a commitment on Friday that I can't get out of, hosting something, a charity thing.
Yeah.
It just came too late into my inbox. And so that's number one, maybe we can see if there's others. I know, for example, Mayor Broderick is very good friends. He went to college with the woman who runs Kristen, the San Diego CCA.
Okay.
So, he knows she's doing lunch, she might be able to fly down for the day. So possibly send it out to them, and
It's a good idea.
You know, that, those are like our in training people, and maybe we get another 2 or 3. And then next year, as soon as we know the dates, or if we have an idea that it's gonna be the similar date or location, as soon as you can get that to people, for me, like the better. Because I
Okay.
just had a long-standing commitment happening. San Mateo.
Well, I'm hoping that it's gonna be fabulously successful so that it's not a question at all for Cal CCA to do this again, because we had to kind of push to have them do that.
To do this lunch.
Yes. And so,
Good for you.
yeah. But, okay, so that's a great idea. We'll reach out to the alternates, and of course, we'll pay all your expenses for whoever wants to go. And I think that's it. So,
Is that it?
yeah, so we're having our audit and finance committee meeting next Tuesday. We didn't have it this morning, so I think a few of you are on that. And we'll be going over preliminary budget at that time, and we'll get into more details about all that at that time. But of course, anyone is welcome to listen in or attend as a member of the public.
Great. Okay. The next item on the agenda is a discussion on the June rate change.
And Leslie is here for that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you. So we are expecting a rate change from PG&E on June 1. Go to the next slide. That rate change will have some impacts to both transmission, distribution, and generation rates. What we've been able to see so far, PG&E puts out some projected impacts across the system-wide average. So the system-wide average increase for the transmission distribution rate is 1.6 cents. And the system-wide average increase for generation rates is 0.3 cents. These are so much bigger increases occurred on the transmission distribution side of the bill, a little bit of increase on the generation side of the bill. It's not a fixed increase for every rate, it's an average for the whole rate book. So we won't know the details again until we get the actual tariff sheets towards the end of the month. But the big thing that is happening that we do know for sure is happening is some structural changes with TOUC, which is the primary rate for residential customers. They're increasing the differentials and the peak to off-peak rates for TOUC. This is a part of, the 2020 phase 2 decision for rate changes that implemented the TOUC rate and scheduled some updates to the differentials to increase over time. So this has been a sort of a long planned thing that's coming, but we're just getting the details about it right now. If you go to the next slide, please.
Wait, can I ask a question? This is
Yeah.
Rick DeGolia. So when you say increase the differential, does that basically mean reduce?
Go to the next slide. It's on the next slide right here.
Okay,
Yeah, so the differential is the difference between the peak and the off-peak pricing. And so that's what we're talking about, is increasing the spread between what it costs for off-peak and on-peak pricing. When the rate was introduced and first rolled out, the direction was to have narrower spread between that peak and off-peak pricing to sort of ease customers away from what had been the default rate, which is a volumetric pricing, into a time-based or time-banded pricing with the time of use rates, right? So less about how many total kilowatt hours you're using and more about when you're using them.
okay,
And so
but
that was been the rollout for the.
does that mean they're reducing the off-peak and increasing the on-peak?
So we don't, so that's the thing, we don't know exactly how the differential is going to play out. I would assume that we're likely going to see a little bit more, whether it's weighted all on the peak side or whether it's split between the peak and off-peak a little bit. That's the detail we don't know yet. But right now, the differential for the summer is $0.53 between the peak and off-peak pricing. So in the direction is that now has to be 0.63 cents. So it needs to increase by 0.01 cents. That is or 1 cent essentially. It needs to increase by 1 cent.
Sorry.
The winter, yeah.
I'm looking at your chart there, it's 0.2 cents versus 0.15 cents, so
It's 20 cents. It's 20 cents,
yeah,
15 cents.
yeah, sorry, yeah, 20 cents versus 15 cents and change, so it's 5 cents.
Yeah,
That's some of the winter, she's talking about peak.
so summer, peak and off peak.
Let's go across the lines there.
Okay.
Season is, it's
5 times the difference.
yeah, the summer season, the peak in the summer is more expensive than the winter. And so and the pricing is more expensive in the summer than is the winter in the TOUC rates. So what we're going from right now, this is the current rate right now, for TOUC for generation, this is the generation portion of the rate. There's a 5 cent differential between the, 18 hours of the day, where it's lower priced, and then the 4 hours of the day, or the 5 hours a day that it's higher price, sorry, so 4 to 9. So 17 hours it's lower price, 5 hours a day that it's higher price. There's a 5 cent spread between those two pricing points for the summertime. It needs to increase to be 6 cents. That's what the direction is from the CPUC. This is what PG&E is going to be doing. How much it's going to increase on the peak and how much it might decrease on the off peak. That's what we don't know yet. That's what we're waiting to get the tariff details for.
And it's supposed to be revenue neutral, right?
So that's what PG&E said, so. And that's revenue neutral to PG&E across their customer base. So that doesn't necessarily mean entirely revenue neutral for us, because we have a subsection of PG&E's customers that are in our territory. So our customer profile doesn't totally match PG&E's customer profile with when they're taking in consideration for, how they break out that spread. Yeah.
It's incredibly complicated.
Yeah. Anders.
Sorry, so, maybe an easy question, but, if you look at one slide, you talk about the T&D, the transmissions and distribution rates.
Yeah.
That are going up a lot more than
Yes.
generation rates.
Yes,
Are they required to, are they required to base that increases on nexus studies?
are they required to?
Based on the needs, based on the nexus studies, are they required to do that, or?
Oh, yeah, well, so that, those are things that they've already, noted, so that those are increases that, they've already sort of basically gotten approved as part of other rate cases. This is so there's two things that are happening here, like, I'm talking about the generation increase or the generation structural change to time of use, which is specific to that particular rate case, the 2020, GRC Phase 2 rate case. The other increases and other things that are happening on June 1, some of them might be related to this, some of them might be happening on other stuff, but the changes in TOUC are just related to that rate case.
If I can maybe
Sure,
just step up
please.
a little bit, this is Jeff House. So when PG&E does a rate case, they basically sort of, they know how much electricity it costs them, and then they kind of make a series of very complicated best guesses as to what the revenue needs to be for the next year to meet those costs. And so with every 3 years, they do a whole rate case, and then during the 3 years in between, they basically sort of, they see how they're doing. And if they're way above, they lower their rates, if they're way below, they raise their rates. So every now and then they do an adjustment like this, where it's like a true up sort of, where they say, okay, we're not taking in enough to cover our cost of our electricity, we're gonna have to raise the rates. They go to CPUC and say, we're gonna raise rates, this should make us revenue neutral on this. But it's, again, they're all projections, so they kind of adjust as they tack as they go along to try to keep as low, sort of keeping the cost of their electricity and the revenue they get from the generation the same. Does that help?
Yeah, I'm just, my little observations, I was paying attention to the PG&E bills. Yeah. And so I see that the T&D portion of the bill.
Yeah.
Quite a bit larger than the actual generation part.
2/3.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
And it
2/3 of the bill.
seems like this trend is continuing with this increase.
That's right.
Therefore, I asked the question a moment ago, are they required to go through a nexus study? before they can raise the GMV rates?
The TMU rates are, we don't have any, yeah.
More of an educational question, it's not something.
It's not. a
They don't
nexus.
have to do nexus studies, like cities have to do that for changing fees.
Yeah.
PG&E does not have to do that. They're regulated by the Public Utilities Commission, and so they need to make their case to the Public
Yeah.
Utilities Commission, but there is nothing like a nexus study.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So this is, so again, this is a snapshot of the generation rates right now for TOUC. And then again, so that increase, they need to increase the differential, they need to increase the spread between those rates to try to, the intent is to try to send a stronger price signal essentially. We really want you to, have a bit stronger price signal between the peak and the off-peak rates. Go to the next slide. So, like I said, those differentials are gonna increase, but how they're weighted, that's what we don't know yet. That's what we have to wait to get to the actual tariff sheets at. Those will come right at the end of the month, before the rates go live. We have about 164,000 customers right now that are taking TOUC as their rate. That is the default rate for new residential accounts. When you sign up and start a service with PG&E, if you don't make any other choice, they automatically enroll you in TOUC. You can choose to be in other rates if those look like they make more better sense to you, like an EV rate or the electric rate's a new rate out there for some customers, but TOUC is really the default rate for residential services. And then right now, we don't quite know what the impacts are gonna be to our revenues, but like I said, the impact is supposed to be revenue neutral to PG&E. So it should be fairly nominal to us, but it won't be exactly a revenue neutral to us, because we don't have the exact same customer profile across the entire PG&E service territory. And then next slide, please. And so again, beyond the TOUC changes, that's what PG&E has been really upfront about in our bi-weekly meetings to say, this is the rate, this is how it's gonna change. The rates team has said that the other generation rates they're not expecting other generation rates to change significantly. What that usually means is that there might be some tweaks here and there in some of the other generation rates, but not significant. Significant is relative term. What we typically do is, we look at the whole rate book when those rate changes come out and we make adjustments as needed to ensure that we stick with that 5% discount. So that's the plan that I have to come to the board with that later this month is to, resolution to make those adjustments as needed to still follow that 5% discount for customers.
Okay, Donna.
This is Donna Colson. Leslie, do you have sort of outside the purview of this a little bit, but do we have any data or does PG&E collect data on, some households just have to use electricity between 4 and 9 because they work full time, there's no one working the day to do laundry. Maybe they can start a little bit more later because they want their machine to go on a timer or their dishwasher or something like that. But sometimes like just cooking and doing laundry and computers and stuff has to happen in the evening for homework for kids and things.
Yeah.
Do we have any understanding how that, just the structure is impacting people? Are any particular communities being impacted more?
We haven't looked at that, but I mean, we could probably start looking at some of that stuff. We haven't done a real deep analysis on, who is using more electricity in 4 to 9, in the certain pockets of our territory. We would have to dedicate some time and do some analysis on our load. We tend to look at the load breakout on a broader system-wide basis for procurement purposes and for analyzing sort of our peak for the system. We haven't done a whole lot of real deep analysis just like on that specific question, but we could start a project on that.
And the only reason that the curiosity to me is, for example, Carlos, do people in East Palo Alto have to, they're two income working families more safe compared to Portola Valley, where maybe somebody's more likely to be home during the day and able to do laundry and, stuff like that. I just don't know. I'm just
Yeah,
curious.
I don't know about the behavior side. I mean, batteries batteries are a big part of that. So I mean, not unlike solar, solar where it's kind of become a cost shift. Batteries could become a cost shift in this area too, because most people who sort of pay attention to demand response or to peak shifting like this do with a battery, not by turning the refrigerator down or not by controlling.
The problem is
No, no,
that
that
very
makes
few
it-
people have batteries.
Oh, I agree. And it's not even, they're not evenly distributed across.
No, and batteries are in rich people's houses.
Exactly.
Let's just face it.
So, I guess what I'm trying to say, maybe I can try to articulate it a little bit differently, is that there are different socioeconomic factors that comes into play here.
Right, that's a good question.
Where, for example, folks who work, do jobs to try to make a living.
Right.
They're more susceptible to these rate changes because
Mhm.
well, between 6 a.m. in the morning until 8 o'clock at night, they're out and working, trying to pay their bills. Whereas, those who are able to have a more flexible work hour and be those who are on the higher end of the social spectrum.
Right, or working at home.
Or
that's what they
working,
do, or they-
they have a lot of flexibility, right, because they tend to have different jobs and so.
Yeah, I mean, what I can tell you is this data analysis is very, very old because this was all very pre-pandemic, pre-COVID. But when we were working with PG&E on the rollout for the time of use transition, they had done basically a system-wide analysis of historical usage for our customers that were gonna be in an eligible to be transitioned from E1 to ETOUC back when we did that transition. So they did this analysis back in like 2019. And at that time, the analysis was that moving customers over to ETOC was actually gonna be a net benefit to customers, just on the load profile of the households, across our service territory, that they were going to naturally just benefit by being on TOUC. But again, that's on very old data. We haven't done a system-wide analysis like that since then. But, we could look at, that energy usage, but then before we did that, I would wanna ask, what's the question we're trying to answer?
I think the question you're trying to answer is, this is Donna again, is do these time of use charges, do these TOUC rates adversely impact disadvantaged communities?
Yeah,
Or communities of color or low income communities?
Well, so how we would have to break that analysis out, because we don't have deep demographic information, that's attached to a customer's utility profile. We could look at it by DAC, right?
That's
We
what
could
I-
actually just look at DAC residential household, like residences that reside in DACs.
Yeah.
And like, what is the,
Well, the question may be more than that, maybe those households are plateaued or even, but then non-DAP households are the ones who are really getting a big benefit because they can load shift through batteries, through being home during the day, through having, possibly, just having a lot more flexibility, maybe even just understanding how to program your dishwasher, how to start that at a different time, or having that option on your dishwasher. Or
I was
even
gonna
having
say,
a dishwasher. Yeah, right, having a dishwasher that says to you, your dishes are not, no, it's 100% true, right? Like, yeah.
Marty?
Yes, Marty Medina. So I think what this comes down to is that we're all creatures of habit, right? We now have this change that's gonna cost you money. So if we don't inform our customers of these changes, you're gonna continue doing what you're doing. I can tell you how many times I've come into the room at my house, raising my voice, saying, turn that off, it's not 9 o'clock, right? You gotta wait until the time is. And fortunately, I can get an extra load of laundry done, if you think about it enough, like, okay, I can time it and get it done in the morning, but a lot of people can't, right? So as we know these changes are coming, to spread, the increasing costs, we need to do a better job of letting our customers know. I think that's the most important.
Also, we're getting started on a cost of service study. So we're gonna be looking very closely at our rates and when people use electricity based on different rates. So as part of that, in a future phase, we could potentially look into that more, maybe breaking up by the DAX or by character of customers, or however we might be able to segregate our different customers.
Donna,
Thank you. I think that the comparison should be like not only between DAC and non-DAC communities, but maybe 2019 to today, like it should be time and geographic. And the reason I'm trying to understand, like, they could be paying the same that they were paying in 2019, maybe they're costing a lot, but maybe this structure has now benefited the non-households to a great extent more. And so if that's the case, then how do we sort of either, like Marty says, educate people to understand why, we need to do a better job of our communications, or do we need to figure out a way to maybe start, I don't know, what can we do to make sure that this is not AI policy, and we're making sure that we're looking at all policies to make sure they're not inadvertently harming certain communities. I think I'm interested in that. I don't know if anybody else is.
I think there's the question that you can look at it through the lens of equity. And so you can see with these rate changes and how this affects communities of different place. Just much the same way that since the express lane was being used and the gas tax how they being elected, which now is being found, well, who needs to be found? This is exactly the same thing. It's like utility, everybody needs power, everybody needs utility, everybody needs electricity. Do they have the options of using it in a way that is most advantageous? Are those tools available? Are those opportunities? That's what this discussion should be.
I have a different question.
Sure.
So as solar has gotten increasingly deployed, both at rooftop and even more so at the grid level, I look at what the timing is for the peak and off peak.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that the time where there is excess electricity is between whatever, 9 or 10 and 4 or 5. And that time period is quite a bit different than between 9 p.m. and 9 a.m., which is priced at the same level.
Yeah.
So I just wonder about that. I mean, before solar was as predominant as it is as a power source for us in California, it was clear that the cheapest time period for electricity was in the nighttime because less was used and some was generated from mostly gas and some from hydro and some from wind. And as we've shut down gas generation to the extent that we have, that's put more of the focus in terms of generation on the solar. So I just wonder how that works between, those time periods. It may be that at some point, we're going to want to see the cost, lower when the solar is as rich as it is, than have it be equal to that time period from 9 p.m. to 9 a.m.
Yeah, I think that probably feeds a lot more into what Jan is talking about with the cost of service study, because it's that we're gonna be looking at what are we specifically procuring power at, and how much is it costing us to deliver it at a certain time frame. And again, I know we all know this, but we only control a small portion of the utility rate. So there is another half of that rate that is on the PG&E side. So even if we set our price to 0 at some point of the day, there's still, 15, 16, 17 cents coming in from PG&E that, you don't have, control over. So, I think that that's something we can look at a little bit more, but as far as the broader rate making, does have, I think, and again, I'm not a rate making expert, I do math for our rates, it's not a rate making expert. Definitely the impact of proliferation of solar, I think has done a lot to feed into, the driving of a time of use rate with the buckets of that 4 to 9 period to send signals to customers that, hey, this is a critical period of time when power is less available and more constrained. It does have a lot to do with the drop off of availability of solar and the ramp up of other generation resources. And so it's an intentional price signal to people to say, if you really want to use electricity during this time, you're going to have to pay a little bit more for it because it's going to be a lot harder for us to get it to you, generally, across the state.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this item? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the next item. The next item on the agenda is discussion on financial diversification, which I think Andy is leading.
Yes.
Glad to have you back, Andy.
Maybe.
Welcome back.
You know, rubbing it in.
What a time to be back.
I wasn't here for the earlier discussion and what prompted this, but, I'm assuming, the troubles in the banking industry of what prompted the discussion, so, I guess I'll just give you, and I don't know what you're looking for, but at least I'll give you an update on what we've done and where we are, so you know. I didn't put a slide in here, but I sent one to you, Brianna, just a little while ago on email. This is just at least a look at where we were as of Friday. I don't think it's really changed much this morning. There was a deposit from BG, but it's pending. So I'll just tell you, we had, as of Friday, $237 million. There you go. Can you make that a little bigger? We have $15 million at First Republic. We've been keeping that fairly low. Just about 2 minutes ago, I got a request for payment to San Diego Gas for $5.6 million in 3 days. So we need to keep some money that's available for us to manage our operating costs. And we have most of our large payments for energy that usually go out between the 20th and 25th of the month. So we may build that up a little bit this month. However, we're keeping it fairly low. When I joined, now it's been about 3 weeks almost now, we had about 20 million at Fidelity. We now have 50 million at Fidelity. And Wilmington, which was the old lockbox that all PG&E deposits used to go to, has been sitting at $46 million. It's been like that for a while. We're planning to close that account. I just sent the documents Friday to get me the access and ability to then send them a letter to transfer it. So we're probably looking to close that soon with the intention of moving that money to someplace else, probably Schwab. The Schwab account's been set up and is ready for deposits, but hasn't been funded yet. But the intention is probably to move the money from Wilmington and close that account to Schwab. And US Bank, which is our custodial account for our 2 investment managers. The US Bank holds the money, was worth $125 million. We have 2 investment managers that direct the funds or manage the funds, but they don't hold it. But that's First Republic's investment is managing about 60 million, and PFM is managing about 65 million roughly. But as I said, Fidelity, or First Republic is still the investment manager. They don't hold the funds at US Bank. See something else here. Oh, well, I know that's it. Sorry, before questions, if you have questions. We've seen no disruption in our First Republic operations. all of our bills have been paid on time and processed. We do all of our bill paying through bill.com, and our wire transfers directly. Everything's gone out as scheduled, everything's operating as it always was, and there's been no disruption. Our payroll is funded through there, and payroll, be questioned from employees about what's been happening to my payroll, and I expected nothing to be changed, and that the case, because we process payroll normally on last Thursday night for a Friday payday. So we've seen no change and no disruption, so, but if this committee or the board is like to direct other strategies or diversification actions, we can do that.
Donna?
Just to add one other thing, First Republic is now JP Morgan Chase.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, they sent, you've all read that, well, you probably all read that, thank you.
Yeah.
And they sent out a notification. It's missing a slight piece. What it says is that Chase acquired almost all the assets. But they never defined in any of the things I've read what almost all means. So I don't, and even the official notification from Fidelity, for First Republic to us and on their website, it uses the term, it's not exactly almost all, but it certainly is the same as almost all. And I don't know what almost means, but as I said, we've seen nothing different in the way we operate, log onto the account, everything looks right. Transfer money between accounts exactly like we did, so there's been no, as if nothing happened other than the fact that the news still left about First Republic. Questions?
Donna?
So, I'm happy to take this up in more detail next week at the finance committee, if that's, the appropriate place where we can discuss more detail here, but I think what's important to understand here is that, the US Bank piece, those are securities that we own, and regardless of who's managing it, PFM, First Republic, JP Morgan Chase, we own them, we have them, and they're very short-term duration, right, Andy? Like,
Well, I'm not as up to date as I was a few weeks ago, however, when I looked at recently, the average maturity of the assets is about 2.5 years.
okay,
But a lot of it, but 80+% is US Treasuries,
Right.
and maybe that's even less safe these days than other things. But I don't know what else you'd be in if it's not US Treasuries. I don't know what's gonna be safe with that. We really haven't.
no, I feel, the US Treasuries are, the risk involved in US Treasuries right now is interest rate risk, right? So interest rates continue to increase, and you, obviously, and any security will have that interest rate risk. Anytime the rates go up, anything we have will probably devalue. But I think it's important to understand that that's not like FDIC insured, it's nothing like that. This is just stuff, these are securities we own in a custodial account that are ours. And, you know, we don't have risk from that standpoint. There's, like I said, there are interest rate risks, there's potentially default risk, if it was non-US treasury, if it's corporate or something, potentially you could have that. But I feel good about that. The Wilmington Bank, sounds like you guys are working to figure out what you're gonna move that to. They're also a smaller regional bank, much like Fidelity, First Republic. So they haven't seemed to be subject to the vicissitudes of the banking industry right now. They seem okay, insulated. The Fidelity Fund is a short-term investment fund, right, a STIP fund.
Yes, we just transferred all the assets last week to their institutional.
Yeah.
market fund.
Division,
Yeah.
yeah, great, okay, so again, there's underlying securities that are owned in a school fund, I take it, or is it a direct
It's
account?
pooled, but that's 90% municipal.
Unit, and we're unitized, we have our share, yeah, okay. And then First Republic Bank, will, I think, probably will eventually just migrate over to the Chase systems, which are, if anybody has used Chase is excellent. JP Morgan Chase is great. That week, I don't think we could have ended up with probably better buyer than Chase. Jamie Dimon will, I'm sure, stabilize it and know how to figure it out, so we're in, pretty good shape there. So, but I wanna thank, Jan and the team for being on it and being really responsive and just always, picking up the phone and being proactive. And really understanding that we were just trying to move our money away from FDIC insured accounts where it had the most risk. Even though we do have this, municipal guaranteed collateralization. There's never a guarantee. Collateral is only as good as the collateral. So I think this diversification and the way we've got it structured is about as safe as we can get and still function as a business. Are you comfortable leaving the accounting, the payroll and everything that we're doing, just migrating it over to the Chase system?
It's not hard to, all of our payroll is run by paychecks, and all we do is direct them which account to get access to, so that's really, it's not First Republic really doing it. And all our invoices, bill.com, and the same thing, we're just directing them which account to access, so it wouldn't be that hard to move our operating account to someplace else, but I'd be okay doing it, I don't see the reason to do it.
No, I would agree.
Based upon where we are.
And I think Chase, all I'm saying is more than when it rolls, there'll be a rollover. And everything will roll over to Chase, and eventually the First Republic Bank will shut down its website, but the Chase systems are really good. In fact, probably even better in some ways than First Republic Bank. And then we'll go to, and then the Schwab account will be similar to Fidelity. It'll be a.
I checked in with the people at First Republic, the customer service people. I mean, people never know what's gonna happen, but they've been told or expecting to keep their jobs and have the same relationships. They're expecting duplication in their back office operations, and marketing people, they expect those. Lose their jobs.
That's a really good question. So, I think, maybe we let the dust settle a little bit, maybe after the end of summer, September, we can bring in the First Republic Bank team that's managing the short duration portfolio and just see if they've had personnel changes and how it's integrating and what's going on. And that seems appropriate.
Questions? I have a question. The Wilmington funds, are they bank funds or are they securities like at Fidelity?
It's, I know they're just it's in a trust account, but it's just, we're not buying securities, it's just in their own operating.
So it's the same as First Republic essentially.
It's the same as First Republic, that's right.
It's just a banking account, right? Checking account.
Yeah, but it's
So
in a,
that's the probably account we have the most risk in, if they were to have, but they seem to be fine.
I don't see any other questions. The only other,
Public comment?
is there any public comment? Is there any public comment in the room? Is there any online? Okay, no public comment. Last item on the agenda is committee member reports.
Little report, which is, unfortunately, Jan couldn't come in last minute, but Sean Marshall and I had the opportunity to go into San Francisco and hear Catherine Warren speak. She's the author of California Burning, which is the history of PG&E. Jan, you got a copy, I don't know if you read it yet, I just finished reading it. For anyone really interested in understanding the sort of long-term, dynastic, problems that PG&E, and the CPUC and the interrelationship between those two, I just want that sort of long-term better understanding. Especially Marty, there's a lot of information on the San Bruno situation and then the Paradise Fires and the different fires and sort of all the mistakes that they made as a company. We're not doing energy transmission, we're not in G lines and energy transmission lines, but it's a bigger, I think, conversation, misguided saving your way to success in a way that they thought, benefit the shareholders, but didn't actually benefit them community. It's a really good book. It's a pretty fast read. You can get it online. And it just gave me a really strong, much better understanding of, the arrogance that can come in, publicly traded companies. And it really makes it, to me, a really strong case for why CCAs are important in energy delivery. And it also really does help you understand the enormous challenges that PG&E and all of us are going to have to transmission and the grid in the future. So if anybody wants to, sure we do. This was good.
Great. Any other reports? Marty?
Yes, some good news. SB 537, the change. Means to allow multi-jurisdictional organizations like ours. I was, Mark Hirschman, Sacramento, I was able to testify with his support, and it did pass out at committee 9-2. So things are looking good on that. It's 40 miles remote from the location that the meeting is and to the different members. So it's not going to affect most of us, but it definitely will allow those finalists and other future long distance relationships to continue. So just wanted to thank staff for the support. Senator Becker was very gracious with his time. And great.
Good job. Glad you went. I think it's really good to send multiple people up there for them to see the various phases of the plan. Heather's your turn.
But Mark is great. Learning how that all works.
Any other reports? Okay, that's end of the meeting.
All right.
Thank you.
Pretty good.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.